Often I tell people I am originally from Hawaii, and when they find that out, a lot of times I think the number one question I get is, why did you move all the way to California from Hawaii? Why would I leave Hawaii? I want to talk about my story and where that all started. And this started, of course, on this little area that's in this really green spot. I grew up right around here in this area, and it's a pretty cool place to have grown up. I want to just show you this is what it looked like. This is the valley that I grew up in. I lived right above this house here. This is my house that I had behind with this big picture window and looking across the valley, seeing all this greenery. And this was my everyday life. And it was just a beautiful, safe place to grow up. And as I got to my high school and then early college years, I ended up getting together with a girl. And during that time, we were living together. I was supporting her through college while she was finishing up. I was going through college for a little while, and we had already started combining our finances because we lived together and we're just kind of college students just growing up, going through this whole process of learning about living. And during this time frame, my car ended up having an issue. I drove a Dodge Colt, and for some reason it just started losing a lot of power. Whenever it rained, it had a lot of issues. So I took it to the mechanic, and they said basically I was looking at a $1,600 repair. Now, that time I was making $7 an hour. With that kind of money that we were not making and that kind of funds, I did have to end up buying a new car, and we decided we could afford it. We had, like, I think it was about a $200 a month payment, and that was the beginning of a really big debt. This is a problem that started to really accumulate. We were living together, so we had to buy furniture, we had to buy all this stuff, and both of us were working. We're both college students, but it was still very expensive. And our debt just started picking up even more. Now, by the time I left the islands, I had about $32,000 in credit card debt. Because we're paying for school too, keep that in mind. We're thinking as soon as she got out of school, then, she'd be able to work full time at a high salary, start paying down that debt. Maybe I would go to school because I was working full time trying to get her through school. And when she graduated, she decided she didn't want to be with me anymore. And she decided, since I was planning to leave the island at that point, she said she'll take the car and continue the payments. Of course, keep in mind, it's a brand new car. All she had to do was finish off the payments. The down payment was already put on a credit card as well. And she said I could just take the credit card debt with me because they were all in my name anyway. So I wasn't in a mindset to go ahead and fight with her about it. So I left her behind and the car, and then I decided I was going to move up to California. Now, at the time, I moved all the way from this beautiful green place to Lancaster, California, way up here. It's about 50 or 60 miles north of downtown Los Angeles, and it literally looks as brown as it looks on this map. So I lived in this place that was basically just like dirt. So I just ended up staying out here in this area for about 2 years. Now, this is where actually my life really began. I would like to say this is where everything that's entrepreneurial about me really started to take root. I had been a paperboy in Hawaii from the time I was in, I believe, the 4th or 5th grade, all the way till I was a sophomore in high school. And then I started working, and all this time I just wanted to find a way to make it big. And so I was studying everything I possibly could about how people make money. I was actually in Amway. When I was 17, I remember sitting inside a lunchroom at a retail drugstore that I worked at the time. These guys who were like 24 to 26 years of age that just finished college were talking about how their friends were retiring because of Amway. Amway was taking off at that time. Now, those who don't know, it's a multi-level marketing thing that was really big in Hawaii at one point. And I was like, what are you guys talking about? How do I make some money doing this? And one of my friends there, who was one of this group that was talking about these early retirees, said, hey, when you turn 18, you can come to a meeting and check it out. Was given the book Think and Grow Rich, and also How to Win Friends and Influence People. And these two books completely changed my mindset about the world in general. Like, I had no idea this could actually be real. And I was looking at these guys who were so young, just building these huge businesses, literally making $4,000 a month. It was a crazy amount of money that you're talking. They were buying houses, and they did so amazing. So I was intrigued by that. And I started learning more about how money worked and how business worked. But at this point, everything started falling apart where I'm going to go ahead and leave. So during this time, it was just about 2 months out before I was planning my trip to move up to California. And I saw this seminar that was going to be done in Hawaii at a hotel for $1,500. It was a 2-day seminar. And I was broke. But I decided I really wanted to learn more about how this internet thing was going to change the world. And I asked my dad if he wouldn't mind helping me out going to this conference. And he said that he'd invest in me for this $1,500 for this conference. And he gave me the money and I signed up for it. This conference even included the hotel room. They wanted you to really focus on it. They gave you this binder and it was like first Amazon. There was this marketplace that was being built out and they would build you a website and you would be able to pick these products and go onto it. And now at this time, there wasn't good search engines at this time, but they were way ahead of the game on this idea of e-commerce. And I was like absolutely blown away that this thing called the internet was coming out. After I took that, I packed up, moved up to California, and I was working through a company called Radio Shack. And I was selling computers, and I transferred from Radio Shack in Hawaii up into Radio Shack in Lancaster. I went from $7.25 an hour down to $5.75 an hour. I guess the minimum wages were different. Now, we did work on commissions at the time, and cell phones were being taken off. So cell phone sales is what kind of supported me in Hawaii, because that was a big thing. Radio Shack was the place to go to buy a cell phone. But when I moved to Lancaster, I was in a place where it was just devastating. The aerospace industry had just flopped and houses were in foreclosures everywhere. And so I decided I'm going to go ahead and continue my studying. And I had a computer that I was able to get from the Radio Shack company that I worked at, because computers, people were buying them actually from Radio Shacks back then. And I actually used dial-up, and I was signed up for that service from that seminar, which they would send you products that you could try to promote and sell, and they would do the drop shipping for you. And again, this is way before internet was big enough to go in and do it. They're trying some new techniques and doing email marketing and other type of marketing. And it didn't end up working out, but it really did plant some seeds on how e-commerce could do well. I moved up to California so that I could think about going to UCLA at one point. And I thought I'd get my residency, stay up here for a year in California, and then see if I liked it and then move back. So I literally moved up to California with 2 big duffel bags and I think maybe a box that came with me when I flew over here. I ordered through a mail catalog because there was no internet ordering really that was big at that time. A mail order catalog that would send an air mattress to the address that I would be staying at when I moved up here. I moved in with my sister and my brother-in-law in this apartment. We paid $650 a month for. So we split it $325 each. That was my rent. Now keep in mind, $325 a month is not that much, but when you're only making $5.75 an hour, I was literally still starving. I remember some of my credit card bills were like $600 a month. Couldn't afford it at that time. I bought this book that said it was all about how to get out of credit card debt. And this strategy, I don't know, not necessarily works today, but I was able to negotiate almost 75 to 80% write-off of that debt. And I'll talk about in another story, because right now I wanted to focus on the mindset that I had when I was in despair. And moving up to California was a place for me to make this big change in my life. What I did, I went and I got this CD course. Back then, Tony Robbins had just come out with this in 1996, just when I moved up here, and it was all over late night infomercials, called Personal Power 2. And it was $300 or $295, about that kind of price. And it's still that price if you go on his website. But it was this complete 25 CD set. In fact, only recently I got rid of it because we don't have a CD player anymore. I was determined to make my life different. And Anthony Robbins got me through it. It was really interesting, but I started changing my mindset. I started figuring out if I wanted to take control of my life, I would have to do something, make a decision, and that decision would make things happen. So sure enough, within a few months, I started looking around saying, what are my opportunities here? What skills do I have? What can I do? And there was a drugstore chain. So I went to apply there. They didn't have a position for me, but there was one in the next city over in Palmdale. So I got a job there, made from $5.75 an hour, got a management training position at $6.50 an hour. And I focused on the fact that I'm making small improvements, and I was still starving. I didn't have a car at the time. In fact, when I was working at Radio Shack in Lancaster, I was riding my bike. I was chased by gangs. My bike got stolen. My car got stolen. I borrowed a car from my uncle, and that got stolen. Well, within the first 3 months, that's what happened. It was horrible. I never heard gunshots before, and I was hearing them nightly. And this is one of those places that just wasn't that safe. And about 1.5 to 2 years later, I got a promotion from $6.50 an hour to $14 an hour. And I had to move. I could buy a car. And then I started commuting, and I was able to now start focusing on clearing my debt. And I worked on that, even with the negotiation of the credit card. It wasn't for a few years out after. It took about 3 years of just avoiding credit cards, trying the I'll get one credit card for this amount and then pay it off and transfer the balances. And that didn't work. It was horrible. So when I figured out about and got this book and started working my way out of debt, things just started turning around little by little. And at my workplace, I started getting promotions year after year. And it was one of those things that just snowballed into just great opportunities. And let me tell you, there were months that I was in really bad shape. But I had a sister and my brother-in-law who took me in. I ended up actually buying a place 2.5 years later because the market was so bad at the time. I think it was about $70,000 that I bought a condo for, which is now selling for $410,000. It's crazy how much the market has actually accelerated. But I bought a place down. My sister and my brother-in-law moved in with me when I bought the new place. And basically the mortgage was the same as what we were paying rent in the other place. But now we had a 2-car garage. We're in a safer city. And we stayed there together for a few years. They helped me pay the mortgage. I was now making money. Things started actually just snowballing. I got the opportunity to buy the condo across the hall. So I didn't own 2 condos side by side by this point. And this is about only 4 years later that this is now. I have 2 condos. I own 2 properties, basically. My debt's all been cleared and things just started. It didn't take that long. I want to really just portray the story because no matter what your situation is, we've gone through, my wife and I today have gone through these downturns, and it really does take a little bit of a mindset. It really does take a little bit of just determination to make a difference. I'd highly recommend, if you're having a time in your life when you want to make a change, Tony Robbins has some great programs. I highly recommend you go ahead and take a look at some of his programs. You can actually find a lot of his stuff on TonyRobbins.com. Just start changing your life today. Says I don't have any affiliation with him other than I do have his products. I even have a current product on changing your life still that I'm going through on an app. And there is just so much that can be done, I want this to be a story of hope, because everything that I started going through, started making these changes, there were seeds planted, and the entrepreneurial spirit has done us very well. But you do take risks, and you do have to believe in yourself. Now, if you're watching this, I believe anybody who's watching this that is going through hardships and downturns and financial issues, things can turn around for you. Now, if you're in good financial shape, then more power to you. You're going to be able to still continue to move forward. We're going to have better stories that will actually tell you how I've gotten to other positions. I am not by any means what I would call successfully rich. I am middle class. Right now, I left my job 24 days ago to start this YouTube channel because I want to take a risk at this. We put some savings together over the last 2 years that will sustain us. And I have another YouTube channel that is actually bringing in enough income to basically probably pay 75% of the rent. And we have no debt. We've completely cleared that. But we are still in our recovery phase from 10 years ago of big mistakes that I made. And along the way, there's a lot that I've gone through and a lot that I believe I can help people with just sharing some of my stories. If you have somebody who has gone through, or if you're going through hardships, I'd love to know what you're doing. Are you getting out of it? Are you able to get out? Are you in such despair that you're feeling like you have no hope? Because I'm telling you, there is hope. If you'd seen where I was at, there's hope for everybody. And that's today's story. That's the route of the path that I've gone on, because people always ask, where'd you come from? And when I say Hawaii, why are you here? How did I get to where I'm at today? Because I don't have a college education. I was going through college. I dropped out. Now, I did go through a trade school to get computer networking degree, a 2-year AS degree, Associate's Science. And that school ended up actually losing its accreditation and finally shutting down. ITT Tech, if any of you are familiar with that from back in the day, I got my computer networking degree from there. It was absolutely useless. Couldn't use it. In fact, I graduated right at 2000, which the whole dot-com bubble came crashing in, which means every computer networker that had experience was now out of a job and flooded the market, so that anybody who came out of school, absolutely useless on that. That put me into another, I think about $30,000 in debt all over again. I took 20 years to pay that off. And it is what it is. It was only 4 years ago where I finally paid that debt off for a school that no longer exists, and a degree that's pretty much useless because everything just turned so fast. Here I am today, surrounded by tech and understanding a little bit about the market and how to make things happen just through sheer will and determination. And I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your stories. Please be sure to comment, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.